And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell. That's Construction. That's Tom Fernelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, come and join us in the chat. Lots to get to here on a Wednesday. We are going to be taking a look into the latest buzz from the coaching carousel. We've got a couple hires. We've got a potential hire. Seems like it's kind of swinging in the balance right now. We'll dive into what the future of the Louisville program looks like and what dominoes may fall. We also want to look at the transfer portal as it stands because there's a lot of talent out there. If we were coaches with limitless scholarships and absolutely no care for how these players felt about each other, if we just want to load up on talent, who would be our top 5 players in the transfer portal, ranking transfer portal players? That coming up in just a little bit. But we want to begin because it is award season with a look at some of the big accolades that are coming out. That includes the Heisman Trophy, which is going to be awarded on Saturday night. Now, the Heisman Trophy finalists were announced on Monday night. They are Caleb Williams, the wide receiver from USC, Max Duggan, the quarterback from TCU. It also includes Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, right? Doesn't it include? It doesn't?
Oh, it doesn't?
What? You're telling me of all the SEC quarterbacks, it doesn't include Hendon Hooker?
What did you just throw?
My heart, okay? I threw it over there to the side. No, Hendon Hooker is not a Heisman Trophy finalist. C.J. Stroud from Ohio State is a Heisman Trophy finalist, and Stetson Bennett, the quarterback from the University of Georgia, is a Heisman Trophy finalist. So, if you were to look at the betting markets, the idea of who is going to win the Heisman Trophy seems like it is not even a debate. I believe you have to lay $2,500 of your hard-earned dollars in order to win 100 back on the proposition that Caleb Williams is going to win the Heisman Trophy. The odds makers certainly believe that Williams is set to join the very, very high echelon of college football, another USC Heisman Trophy winner. So now let's look at the picture itself, because here's what we know about the Heisman Trophy voting process. Number one, the ballot includes 3 spots. You can't have 5. You've got to make decisions about who you're going to put, which means we've got more finalists than we even do spots on the ballot, which means that there's going to be a lot of debate over maybe the number 2 and the number 3 spot, or maybe even just who those top 3 are. We also know that Heisman Trophy votes are distributed regionally. They include different pockets of the country, and they include one pool of national votes. We also know that there's a whole lot of Heisman Trophy votes out there, and not everybody is going to be in a position to, give the same amount of eyes or the same amount of priorities as you do, college football fan, or as you do, college football analyst. So what do we make of the collection of finalists that we have for the Heisman Trophy?
I think my number one takeaway is that Caleb Williams will win this in a runaway, and that the second, third, and fourth place votes were pretty split up in order to allow a guy like Stetson Bennett. I think that people are more likely to take sort of creative or feel-good liberties with their ballot when it comes to their second, third, and fourth place votes.
Just second and third.
Okay, second and third votes.
I mean, and it's
right.
tough. It is very difficult to narrow all the way down to 3.
Right, but like you may say, like, hey, I'm going to throw Stetson Bennett in the third place. I'm going to throw him a second place because I want to recognize this guy. And I'm sure you're going to have some stodgy voters out there. By the way, maybe this is Tom, right? Or maybe it's Chip, who like, I would never vote for a guy who put FUCKUTAH on his nails. I'm sure you'll have a couple people out there who don't vote for Caleb, or maybe like give Caleb a second or something like that because of those antics, and where I think most of us think it's hilarious because he actually has to, back it up with his play on the field, right? It's not like he's just some fan who doesn't have any skin in the game. But like, I don't know. I think that I think the voting's fine. I mean, we don't really remember like nobody remembers who got snubbed from the Heisman ceremony. We remember guys who got snubbed who should have won it. Next year, nobody will remember that Hendon Hooker didn't go. It's not a thing that we're going to spend more than one show on, I don't think, right?
No.
Well, Tennessee fans will remember forever.
Right.
Because that's just what they do.
They got one that they remember for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because he probably should have won the damn award.
Oh, and they'll argue that Hendon should have won this award too. I think like the entire process is not designed, but by the way it's designed, there's always going to be snubs because that's just it. Like there are a lot of very good players in college football. And in some years, some guys just kind of completely pull away. There's absolutely no question. You know, weeks ahead of time, this guy's going to win. But then there are years like this season where there wasn't really a guy that was from start to finish the clear-cut Heisman winner. CJ Stroud was the favorite to start the year. He was up there all year. He gets there at the end as a finalist. But then the ballot comes, and in a year in which we were talking about the possibility of a 2-loss team making the playoff until the very last day, which just is kind of an indication of how there wasn't a clear-cut anything this year, you're only allowed to vote for 3 guys. And there's always more than 3 guys who are worthy of getting a Heisman vote or being a Heisman finalist. So no matter what, you're going to leave somebody out and somebody's going to get snubbed. Like if you look, I'll just use the Big Ten first team and second teams. The Big Ten has Blake Corum, Muhammad Ibrahim, and Chase Brown. Only 2 of them can be on the first team. Illinois fans were so pissed off because Chase Brown was not all Big Ten first team running back. Well, it's not like the other 2 guys sucked. Somebody was going to get snubbed no matter what happened because there were only 2 spots. And that's the same thing with the Heisman. You want to argue that they should bring 10 guys to the ceremony so that way everybody can feel involved? Fine. I don't care. But it's just, somebody's getting snubbed. There were a lot of good players. Hendon Hooker tore his ACL. His candidacy died then. And I'm sure other people at that point, there were probably some voters who just said, well, he's not going to win, so I'll just vote for somebody else to at least maybe get them a shot to get him to the finalist. I don't know, but yeah, that's how I feel.
So Tom's for playoff or for Heisman expansion, but not for playoff expansion.
I'm not for Heisman expansion.
I see how it is. So
when
Illinois finishes 12th, he'd be like, the playoff expansion is great. This is fantastic.
No, I won't. As long as Illinois wins the Big Ten, I won't care if they're in the playoff. But as far as Heisman expansion, no, I'm fine. I don't care. I voted for my 3 guys. Some of them are there. Some of them aren't.
All right. Was it okay? Now that you guys cannot reveal your votes,
we cannot reveal our votes until after the announcement on Saturday night.
What was your hardest vote? First, second, or third?
Slotting, like I probably had slotting 2 and 3, and like figuring out how to slot 2 and 3.
First was obvious for you, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
First was hard for me.
Interesting.
Tom really does hate nail art.
Oh no, that was easy. Once I saw that, I was disgusted. No, first was hard.
Don't you think though, for anybody that like I hated it. The look for Caleb Williams with I just didn't like it. I thought it was an awful look. Is that how you want to represent yourself? I am what about the kids? I am in that camp since I have them. But if you thought about changing your Heisman vote from that, you should lose your vote. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. It didn't impact my vote one bit. The one thing that I did, and it kind of felt like this was going to happen. And I think it's a product of our society. It's a product of what we see right in front of our face. And I was guilty of this too. So I want to make sure when I feel like I'm challenging everybody, I have voter's remorse or voter's regret. Okay. So there's a quarterback in New York who in the regular season threw 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Like that's insane. And I know he rushed for some, but they all rush for some, right? To add to those totals. But that's kind of crazy when you think about it. Now, this is where I do think there's an incredible recency bias where you can steal the award, you can steal the invite just from one performance. And it's supposed to be the best player in college football for the entire season, right? And I think that's all pretty clear cut who it is. And I actually thought Caleb Williams when he got hurt and he wasn't able to play the way he did all season long, I was like, well, that should explain, like that shows you his greatness, because this team fell apart. Their offense wasn't the same. And it showed you like, oh, okay, that's what he's meant to that team all season long. But then there's one side of this that I really don't like. And I feel like I might have just even made that mistake. You feel like you're trashing somebody to make the case for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
If Stetson Bennett's there for a lifetime achievement award or for the success he's had over 2 years and because he's done a great job, I don't have a problem with that either. I just like kind of what Tom's saying. I do wish there was maybe this is a year, maybe you could have brought in 5 to give a guy like Hendon Hooker, who's done so much and had a spectacular year. If you could have brought him 2, but hey, are we going to give out a trophy to everybody? There's got to be somebody who's left out. I think we have to be okay with that.
Well, my understanding is that it is a mathematical formula. They look for a break in the voting points, and it's like 3 points for your first place, 2 points for your second place, 1 point for your first place. For your third place. And so they just add up all the points. All the players have points, and they look for wherever the clean break is. Sometimes there are 5 finalists. Sometimes it's just 3. This year it is 4. And that means that the drop off was after whoever is 4th, whether that is Caleb Williams, Max Duggan, CJ Stroud, or Stetson Bennett.
There you go.
So
I could be wrong. I think they changed that policy this year. I think there's going to be 4 finalists no matter what.
Oh, really?
I could be wrong. If you can fact check me, I think I read that somewhere.
So are you, I got asked this question yesterday, and I think that I feel pretty confident in my response, but I love what you guys have to say here. Do you think that this is another chapter in it's just a quarterback award, or do you think that when you're trying to list all the most outstanding players in college football that, this is like, these are some of the most outstanding players in college football?
Who won it 2 years ago?
Devontae Smith.
Oh, okay.
But do you remember? So here's what I was thinking about this morning too. And I remember because I felt like McElroy, who I was doing the radio with at the time, had proposed this question, and a lot of people were asking this. Who is the best player on Alabama's team? Because it was Mac Jones was the quarterback, right? And he was making a push, and everybody's like, well, wait a second. We've seen what Tua can do. Mac's just doing the same thing. Maybe it's not the quarterback. It's actually Devontae Smith. And then last year, it feels like we went right back to kind of our old ways when Will Anderson doesn't get an invite and he doesn't even finish up there. And it's like, oh, all right, maybe we went back to this position.
But Aiden Hutchinson was a finalist last year.
Yeah, so maybe we're starting to change. Yeah.
So it's just 1 year where there's no real clear-cut, obvious choice all season long, and a bunch of quarterbacks end up, and now suddenly it's a quarterback award again. The quarterback has always been the guy who wins this thing most often. This is just a year where there's only quarterback finalists.
Who won
the first time in 4 years it's happened?
Bryce Young.
Yeah. So like my thing is the reason Hutchinson was there last year and not Will Anderson is that regionally the vote, like the regional breakdown of voting matters. And like people are from outside the South are not going to put 2 guys from the same team on their Heisman ballot more often than not. Right. So Will Anderson gets some thirds, some seconds, probably very little firsts, and Hutchinson gets, on a decent number of ballots from the Midwest.
I think that the award is supposed to go to the most outstanding player in college football, and it's easy to stand out when you have the ball in your hands every single snap.
Yeah. Also,
but I also like
there's nobody deserving this year who's not a quarterback among the skill positions. Like it's not going to go to a lineman. It's not going to go to a defensive guy. They lost 4 games.
So then that's my problem too. Is like, what does winning have to do with being the best player in the country?
If he's so good, right?
But
like
he can't play defense. Like he doesn't have that Georgia defense. Like if you had other help around you, I do think like if you really wanted to look at who is the most outstanding player in college, it would open up a lot more options than we do. I'm well aware of what you're saying, Bud, and I agree.
If Bijan takes over the game against Alabama, maybe he's got a shot. If Bijan takes over the game against TCU, maybe he's got a shot. But like, what other games did Texas lose? They lost 4 times, right?
Yep.
Bijan. Yeah. Now he had a nice game against Texas Tech, if I recall. Other than that, he wasn't big in those losses, right?
Is Bijan the non-quarterback, Danny, that you feel like has the best argument here?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you watch, like if you just watch games, you're like, oh, that guy's on a little bit of a different level than everybody else. But I don't think you can win with 4 losses. Have we seen does anybody ever what was Lamar Jackson's record?
He was they only had
they were 8-4.
They did get that high? Yeah, I thought
They
were. I
lost
thought
4
might have-
times that year.
maybe
I think
9-3.
They might have been 9-3. I think
They
they
had
lost the
one-
bowl game and they finished
They had
9-4.
one-
RG3, he was another one that might have
RG3.
had multiple losses, but typically, like people think like Bud, like if you're that good, you've got to win games, but sometimes it's a lot more than that.
In the playoff era, you need to be solidly in the playoff race to win it.
Right.
Or you need to have just stupid numbers.
Yep.
Bijan against Alabama, 130 total yards, receiving and rushing, 1 touchdown. Bijan against Oklahoma State, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bijan against Kansas State, 243 yards, 1 touchdown. Kansas isn't going to count as a big game, but he had 4 touchdowns in that game. I mean, there were only 2 games
shut
this
down
year.
against TCU, right?
Yeah, TCU, he did nothing. He had 29 yards and no
Which
touchdowns.
it's kind of crazy because all it takes is one game. Like, and that's what the
That's what happened to
supposed be.
Hooker. Yeah, one
Yeah.
game. He was the greatest thing on the world, and then he had one game, and everybody just kind of get rid of him.
And what's Bijan's moment? Oftentimes you need a Heisman moment, right?
Mhm.
With Caleb Williams, I think we can all see it's throwing ridiculous passes against UCLA and Notre Dame on national television.
Mhm.
And the fact that they're leading 17-0, right?
Yeah.
When he gets hurt. He gets nicked up just a little bit, and that team falls to pieces.
He was also kind of a magician against Notre Dame in the
yeah.
regular season finale. That was
Right.
like UCLA, Notre Dame, beginning of the Pac-12 title. That's what kind of powered that. I would throw Corum into the conversation if we're going to go non-quarterbacks. I bet when we see the final voting, I bet that he's going to show up on a couple of second.
You know what
third
I
place.
think hurts him though? Is Donovan
The
Edwards
non-conference
stepped
schedule?
right in and
Oh,
like did
yeah.
the same exact thing. Like it's almost like, and that's where I look at Stetson Bennett. I'm like and I did see somebody propose the question, like, what if Hendon Hooker was in Georgia's offense and Stetson Bennett was in Tennessee's offense? Would they have been anywhere similar? And I think Hendon Hooker absolutely would have had a ton of success at Georgia. I think Stetson Bennett would have put up better numbers, but I don't know if he's leading, Tennessee to a 10-win season.
Also, I really like Blake Corum. I think he's going to be a very good NFL player, and I think he had a great year. But if you just look at yards per game, scrimmage yards, not just rushing and receiving, these are the Power 5 players he finished behind in yards per game. Zach Charbonnet, Bijan Robinson, Chase Brown, Mo Ibrahim, Izzy Abanikanda, Raheem Sanders, Deuce Vaughn, Eric Gray, Quinshawn Judkins, and Devin Achane. They all finished ahead of Corum as far as yards per game. He was helped by playing for Michigan as far as the Heisman conversation went.
Yes.
But
And
what's
Michigan's schedule
crazy
that Corum actually played was a joke.
So much of this though is timing. Like, and our resident Vols in the chat lighting us up. If Tennessee played Bama last or second to last, and just everything the same, like if they had lost to Georgia in week 2 and then flipped it, the game that he got hurt was the South Carolina, and even lost to South Carolina early, but he beat Bama late in November, he might have won it.
Also, like,
He'd definitely be there.
Even change the subject a little bit as far as timing. We were talking about before LSU lost to Texas A&M. If it had beaten A&M and beaten Georgia, people were saying it was going to be in the playoff because it was a 2-loss team and it had beaten Georgia, as if there haven't been other 2-loss teams that beat a number 1 ranked team during the regular season who never even got considered for the playoff before.
Speaking of individual accolades, before we keep things moving right here, the CBS Sports All-America Team has been released. A couple notables. Caleb Williams did end up getting that QB1 spot on the list. The running backs are Blake Corum and Bijan Robinson. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the only offensive player who was unanimous on the first team. He is joined at wide receiver by Jalen Hyatt. Michael Mayer gets the tight end nod. On the defensive side of the football, Will Anderson Jr., unanimous at the linebacker position. You also see Jalen Carter show up on the defensive line. And then in the defensive backfield, you got to have some Iowa love. Jack Campbell at linebacker, Kavion Merriweather at defensive back, Brian Branch at Alabama. Any big take? Oh, also of note, the Big Ten, 10 first-team selections. SEC, second among all conferences with 5 total selections. When you include the second team, Big Ten 20, SEC 12. Nobody else had more than 10 total selections. Nobody else had more than 5 first team selections. The Big Ten dominates first team and second team, the CBS Sports All-America list. Anything stand out as notable, snub, anything catch your eye about this group?
I mean, I think the lack of SEC players on there is warranted. Like, I would have Brock Bowers over Michael Mayer. I just think he's that much better of a player. Although I know Mayer was more heavily used, so I understand the vote there. I'm not saying it's a bad vote. I do think Brock Bowers, is a really, really good player. But I tweeted this yesterday before the flight home from Nashville because we were doing our 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal show. 2019 LSU beats this year's 2019 All-SEC team, right?
When the All-SEC team came out, that's what you tweeted?
It was terrible. Like, I'm looking at this. I'm like, here's your All-SEC team. You tell me, would you rather have this team or would you rather have 2019 LSU? Hendon Hooker, Quinshad Judkins for Ole Miss, Devin Achane, Jalen Hyatt, Antoine Wells at South Carolina, Brock Bowers, Osiris Torrance, Warren McClendon, Darnell Wright, Amelia Kior, Ricky Stromberg, Devin Achane is your all-purpose back. I think the D-line is especially weak, honestly. Jalen Carter's a stud. Derek Hall, I don't think is like a top pick or anything like that. Like that's more of like a career achievement thing, in my opinion. He's a good player, but he's not like, if he was that good, he would have gone pro last year, right? B.J. Ojolari, Byron Young, Will Anderson, Drew Sanders are great edge rushers. Henry To'oTo'o honestly shouldn't be on the first team. Like that's just more of like a name recognition thing from the writers, I think. Georgia's freshman who's a finalist for the best linebacker award, didn't even make this list. Emmanuel Forbes, Chris Smith, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Jordan Battle. I mean, it may be a little tongue-in-cheek to say 2019 LSU beats that squad, but I think prior years of the All-SEC team beat the crap out of this year's All-SEC team. This SEC was not a good year. This is probably the worst SEC in 2 decades.
It's a bad year for the league.
Yeah, it's not it's still the best league by my power ratings by a little bit, and it's always the best league. Like literally, like for the past 15 years, it's always been the best. But some years it's the best by a ton. And
this year, not so much.
By a little bit, and this year it's by a little bit.
The SEC West champion had 2 conference losses.
Right, exactly.
You just like it was Georgia, and then there was a big drop off. Georgia was awesome, and Georgia also suffers from you can't put everybody from Georgia on there. Like Georgia's also, so deep and rotates so
before
often.
Before the Georgia fans correct me, Dumas Johnson is a first-year starter, not a freshman. I misspoke. I was reading off a lot of names.
Any other thoughts? By the way, I should be released in a little bit.
You didn't mention which schools had the most players on the team. You mentioned the conference, but who were the 2 schools who had 4 players?
I'm gonna guess it's Illinois because I know that Witherspoon, Chase Brown, off the top of my head,
Alex Kolchewski and Johnny Newton. Yeah, Illinois and Ohio State tied for the most players. Just throwing that out there.
The recognition of Ivan Pace.
Yes,
there are some G5 guys that will get drafted, and he's a total stud.
Yeah, I mean that was easy. The linebacker position went really fast when I was filling out my ballot.
There it is. I was waiting for degenerate Spartan to point it out. CBS taking the Big Ten. Big Ten bias.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, listen, my bias can be bought.
Yeah. The NFL draft have Big Ten bias. Watch this year because the SEC guys on the first SEC team ain't getting picked high.
That's what I'm curious to see. Is the draft? Is there? Is that gap going to start to close a little bit?
I will say the only thing about our first and second teams that kind of made me mad, made me feel like somebody who was mad that Stetson Bennett's a Heisman finalist. Olu Oluwatimi was not a first or second team center, and I don't have anything against John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota or USC's Brett Nealon, who are both good players.
Oluwatimi's a stud, though.
Oluwatimi's the best center in the country, and the second best center in the country wasn't on the team either. That's Oregon's Alex Forsyth. So the 2 best centers in the country were not on either of our All-America teams.
But the centers that are good.
They're good, but they're not the best.
Not egregious.
They're not the best.
The way it's filled, like we get all these, offensive line. If we could fill up our offensive line with other centers and not have the centers all rule each other out, then, we would be able to give out more, right? Because I think that I would power rank them ahead of some of the offensive line, but it's tough. It's tough to fill out this thing. Again, CBSSports.com to check out the full list, and our CBS Sports Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and True Freshman of the Year that will be posted a little bit later today. Y'all want to know who it is?
No, I want to be surprised.
Okay.
Wait, the True Freshman of the Year?
Yes.
Is it EJ Warner?
No.
Wait, is it true freshman or is it just any freshman?
Is Judkins a true or no? Did he Rich? Is Judkins?
He's a true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A 3-star prospect out of Alabama showed up in a running back room with TCU's best running back and SMU's best running back. And by midseason, that boy was running for 25 times a game for about $1.50 per game. Quinshon Judkins is our freshman of the year. Dude is an absolute stud.
And did you see Lane in the cold, all alone in the bleachers, is the only coach who was watching him? You guys have seen that picture, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't watching Brian Harsin.
That is true.
It is true.
Do we might have some sirens like in the middle of this right now.
What's happening?
You see those sirens.
Yeah, would that be sirens, or is this just the according to Chris Lowe at ESPN, Jeff Brohm and Louisville football are in the process of finalizing a deal to bring Brohm back to his alma mater as head coach. Sources tell ESPN the deal would be for 6 years in the $35 million range. Brohm has been at Boiler football for the past 6 seasons. So
There you go.
We'll hit the break and then come back with more coaching news. All right. Coming up on the other side, it's looking like Jeff Brohm will be making his return to Louisville. What does that mean for the Cardinals, and what does that mean for Purdue? It's an emergency podcast in a podcast. Emergency podcast inception. All that and more. Next.
Meanwhile, on Paramount Mountain.
All right, let's do this roll call. It's freezing up here. Blase, where you at, Blase?
It's Blaze.
Okay, so that's how it's gonna be.
Blaze?
Y'all need to say your name right. Be Louie.
Do you mean blue?
Okay. You want to go to war? You prefer not to go to war? Me too. Ridiculous. Hey, Aaron.
Here, coach.
Thank you. Where's Bumbly Bay at? Is Bumbly Bay up in here?
Well done. That might be one of my favorites. Like was well done. Like some of these, you kind of have to act like you like stuff. That was good. I got a legit laugh.
Hey, listen, on up on Paramount Mountain, it's a mountain of entertainment. Yep. Okay. Peloton is not just about bikes and treadmills. It's about a team of instructors ready to motivate you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Maybe you are trying to pack up your boxes to quickly get from West Lafayette, Indiana, back to Louisville, Kentucky, and you're on a time crunch. How are you, Jeff Brohm, going to be able to get in that workout? Well, with Peloton, there are literally thousands of classes ranging from strength training to yoga to running to boxing. Peloton has the perfect non-judgmental space to experiment with new types of movement at a level and pace that feels good for you. It doesn't matter if you only have 5 minutes or if you've got an entire hour. It doesn't matter if you're trying to sneak it in as an early riser or if you like that evening burn. There's always a Peloton class that fits into your day. Maybe it's just a 10-minute upper body stretch. Maybe it's a 30-minute run before bed. Peloton is where you'll find what works for you on your schedule, wherever you happen to be. And the community is fantastic. You can link up with different instructors that you like. You can pick different music that you like. The music is iconic, and you can see that leaderboard. You can see those users. Tom, Danny, what have we been getting into in the Peloton community?
Well, with Thanksgiving and conference championship games the last couple of weeks, I have not been able to do the bike nearly as often. And it's funny because I was able to get back. I've gotten back on it the last couple of days as things have slowed down. And oh my God, it is funny how much harder it is after you've been off. You go from riding it every day to riding it a couple times a week, and it gets much worse. But it's nice to be back on. And thank God, as long as the rides, I did a 30-minute Power Zone endurance ride with Matt Wilpers yesterday. Get the blood flow and get the juices going again. But thankfully, they also provide post-ride stretch classes, because man, would I be sorer than hell without those things. Thank God. I was never a person who stretched before or after a workout. But now that, you start getting older, you realize, oh, no, there's a reason you stretch before and after workout, or else it'll keep you from being incredibly sore. So thank you to Peloton for those post-ride stretches. They've taught me so much about how not to hurt myself.
They got everything you need. I think the best thing you said there, Chip, was about the time that's offered, because sometimes you only got 5 minutes. They got a 5-minute stretch post-class. They have hour yoga classes, too. Like if you really want to go deep on it. My favorite thing, I've been traveling a lot. the hotel where I stay as a Peloton. I just signed into my account. All my followers are right there. The people I compete with when I beat Tom, I can still see it. So you don't miss a beat.
Man, the chat's asking me about, do I Peloton? I don't Peloton yet. I need to, though, because, like, I got to tell you. So I got off the plane last night, right, and went right to the softball field from my Uber and changed. Didn't have time to stretch. We beat the team that had all new players come 2 weeks ago that had beat us like 34-3 2 weeks ago because everybody shows up in their travel softball jerseys like that. You guys are a lot better than you used to be. This is surprising. Pull off kind of a miracle with a couple of very helpful double play / left the bag early calls. And I think I kind of hurt my hip on my trip to Nashville, but it was barking at me. I don't stretch. I'm getting older. Like I need to stretch. I need to Peloton. You know,
you've got that stretch class with Peloton because Peloton is motivation that moves you anytime, anywhere. Try the Peloton bike or tread risk-free for 30 days. Bud, you can try it with no risk for 30 days. Go to onepeloton.com. That's ONEPELOTON.com. New members only. Terms apply. Again, go to onepeloton.com to try the Peloton bike or tread risk-free for 30 days. When you see those sirens in your feed, you know exactly what that means. We have more coaching news as Chris Lowe at ESPN is reporting that Jeff Brohm and Louisville are in the process of finalizing a deal to bring Brohm back home. He is a Louisville native. He played at Louisville. He was an assistant coach at Louisville. And, you know, before the hire of Scott Satterfield, it was very much he was on the wish list for the Cardinals. He elected to stay at Purdue, where he has delivered some huge recruiting wins, where he has led the Boilermakers to one of their biggest wins in program history, that 2018 victory over Ohio State. Rondale Moore, David Bell, explosive offenses all the time. Charlie Jones had a fantastic year this season, and he got Purdue to the Big Ten championship game. So now he is going to Louisville. What do we make of the hire first from the Louisville side?
How happy are Louisville fans right now?
Jeez, you traded Scott Satterfield for Jeff Brohm?
Yeah. Like the reaction to Satterfield leaving earlier this week was Louisville fans were like helping him to the door, packing his bags and showing him, you know, remember the airport's only 15 minutes away. They were showing him the way to Cincinnati. And now they get the guy they wanted originally when they ended up with Satterfield. Like if you're a Louisville fan, you've got to be very excited about this, and for good reason, because Brohm had 6 very successful seasons at Purdue. It was a good team in the Big Ten. It got to the Big Ten West championship game this year. It had good offenses. It has produced NFL players, first-round picks in the last couple of years, and now he's coming home to do the same thing there. So I think if you're Louisville, there's no reason not to be happy. You've got a coach who wants to be there, and you've got a coach that has a history of success.
I mean, I think they're extremely happy. They clearly wanted to do this in prior years. Mm-hmm. Brohm is the native son of Louisville. He played there, he grew up there. It's always been who the power players at Louisville wanted to go hire. I don't know that the AD wanted Satterfield out, but I do know that the brokers, the power guys, the money guys at Louisville definitely did. That's why Scott Satterfield took the Cincinnati job, okay? Louisville has a great thing going right now. They are serious players in the NIL game. They are recruiting better than they ever have, due to the NIL money that is flowing in there. Like, you don't leave that if you're Scott Satterfield if you don't think you're going to get fired in a year or two. You go, you restart your clock, you get 6 guaranteed years from Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati's NIL stuff apparently is nothing to be spoken of at this point. Jeff Brohm, in my opinion, has kind of maximized what you can do at Purdue. And I don't want to speak negatively. He's done a great job at Purdue. But the moment the Big Ten does away with divisions, whether that's in 1 year or 3 years, or whenever UCLA and USC join, they got the Board of Regents meeting coming up for UCLA. We'll see if UCLA is even allowed to go. Is the moment that Purdue probably adds about a half loss per year additionally within conference to their schedule because of the division that they are in. I think he has maximized Purdue to about as good as anybody can do, right? And that's one of the best Purdue runs in my lifetime. Louisville has real potential with the divisionless ACC going forward. You don't have to play Clemson, FSU, NC State every single year. You're going to get a couple more shots at like a Duke, Pitt, although Pitt's been pretty good. You know, the schools like that. Louisville's clearly willing to spend. And also, who you can recruit at these schools could not be more different, okay? Louisville, you can get in anybody. Like I'm not, and I'm a Florida State grad, so is Danny. I know FSU's better academically now than it was.
We
when
understand
got
Purdue's
there.
struggles getting guys in.
Yeah, Purdue's like an academic school. Yeah, I mean, Purdue, you have actual admission standards in the recruiting process. You're going to get some exemptions, but there are some guys you just can't take at Purdue. Liberty, if it's like, all right, 2.0 core, couple, you took the SAT. Louisville, I think I said Liberty. Excuse me, Louisville. Yeah, you're in. Cool. So it's the opportunity to win a lot more. You get the NIL game. You can recruit a wider base of player and a more talented player than you can at Purdue. And I think it's going to be rare to see a Big Ten coach leave for a non-Power 2 job. But Louisville has a lot of booster money that many ACC and Big 12, Pac-12 schools don't actually have.
I was kind of prepared to hear that Louisville wasn't going to be able to run the number up. And like 635, if that's what Lowe is reporting right now. I don't know. I don't know if there's other like emotions or conversations that were happening behind the scenes, but felt like Purdue might have been able to match that. I don't know.
This is
go ahead.
This is like a hometown kind of discount.
Yeah, because he could probably make 8 a year if Purdue wanted to back up the
especially
Big
with
Ten
the new TV money that's coming in. It'll be a
Yeah.
drop in the bucket. They were like, 8, sure. You want 10? Like we can throw that in. I mean, to me, I think this is a huge get for Louisville. I think it's huge for the ACC because I thought it would look rough at Satterfield, even though he's going to Cincinnati. It's like, ooh, that just, if you're Jim Phillips, you're kind of watching the landscape to see what's happening. Now you're getting a guy to come back that this infuses some life. I totally agree with Bud when you're saying about he's maximized what he's done, and I'm sure he's probably aware of that. Like, all right, we just won our division. We got to play for a Big Ten title. But you've pulled off some upsets, which have been great. I mean, they're the spoiler makers for a reason, but to sustain that, I think your drop off, your floor is a lot lower at Purdue in a bad year, which your floor at Louisville should be a bowl team. 6 or 7 wins should be the worst case scenario for you at Louisville.
So, yeah, and it was mentioned in the chat like that Brohm only went 36 and 34. Purdue in the 4 years before he got there was 9 and 39. So it's to dismiss what he's done because of the overall record is very wide of the actual point in the context of what happened there.
And 4 bowls in 5 non-COVID years at Purdue is remarkably good. The question that Jeff Brohm, I think one of the reasons why he's leaving, other than the fact that like Louisville's his home and he's openly said that he'd be interested in coming back to Louisville before, right? Whether he knew that was going to get out or not is a different question. Here's the question he doesn't want to hear. All right, let's say, and Danny's right, that they probably have a drop-off coming because sustaining 9 and 3, 8 and 4 at Purdue is not doable unless you just have a joke of a non-conference every year. Let's say he did sustain it. He's going to have boosters ask him, Jeff, how do we get to the next level? Eventually, your donors, if they're giving you money, they want to see improvement. It's really hard to tell these guys, you need to pay me a whole lot of money because I'm maxing you guys out. There is no next level. These dudes who are rich enough to donate a lot to schools, but not rich enough to own an NFL team, they want to actually believe that they can win the Big Ten when you can't at Purdue, right? It's just not doable in the college ball landscape. That's going to eventually lead to people getting tired of you. And then when you have one down year, like Danny mentioned, it's going to come. They're going to be like, oh, can this guy still coach? And eventually, at first they celebrate you maximizing, and then they kind of lose sight of the fact that you are maximizing. And then they get tired of you when you slip up one time.
Yeah, 6 seasons is a lot in the modern tenure.
If you like at Purdue, realistically, and we've talked a lot about this, once they do away with the divisions, you're going to have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. When USC joins, like those are the clear-cut top 4 teams. So it's kind of like a race for 5th.
And Matt Rule just got hired at Nebraska.
Right.
And
so it's going to
just got hired
and
by Wisconsin.
Illinois has 4 players on the All-America team.
And Illinois has 4 players on the All-America.
But in the ACC, it's been Clemson, and I know Florida State looks better, but there's no like stranglehold on the top 3 spots or 4 spots. Like, and even Miami, like traditionally, yes, but they were a mess this past season. So you're like, why can't we just challenge Clemson? Like you can go instantly, you can become competitive. Florida State, Clemson, whoever you want, I think, and you can see that, you can picture that in your mind. Hey, why not? Where at Purdue, yeah, we might be able to beat Penn State things go perfectly, but to get to the level where we're beating all of them, it's a lot tougher ask.
So what's next for Purdue?
Sean Lewis signed that contract at Colorado yet?
Ooh.
Because that's just a hire. Like, to me, before Lewis got announced as the Colorado OC, or that broke, as soon as Louisville came open, Sean Lewis, once I figured, because I thought Brohm was gone as soon as that happened, I thought Sean Lewis was the most logical replacement for him at West Lafayette, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Lewis would make sense. Kevin Sumlin's a Purdue alum. I don't know if you want to go down that road, given how things went at Arizona. I think most people in the industry thought that he should have sat out a year after the end of A&M and maybe kind of regrouped, got stuff together. I don't know. Maybe he has it more together now, and he'd be ready to coach again. But he did go to Purdue. So, look, they're going to have interest because you get rich at Purdue. Like, Purdue to me is kind of a paycheck job. The money is the best thing about it, not the ability to win. So you will have a lot of interest. What you have to do, though, is sort through the guys who are just in it for the money versus the guys who think they can actually maximize. They're going to embrace the grind of not being able to recruit every guy you want and trying to compete as a clear underdog in the new Big Ten.
You think there are any coaches out there right now who've already accepted jobs who might be regretting it now that Purdue's come open? Because, I mean, a Big Ten job, like you just said, it's a lot of money there.
Yeah, I mean, it sets your family up for generations if you get it like a guaranteed 5-year, $8 million deal. Uncle Sam's taking a cut, but still, if you invest it right.
But if you're like if you're Tom Herman, maybe he knew the landscape better than we did, and we assumed there were great offers out there, and there weren't. So maybe you might regret it and be like, "Ooh, I wish I could have had that one," but I don't know if he's one that would have gone there.
It's a great retread job. Because like if you're somebody looking to jump up, most of the time when you get Purdue, you don't get hired out of Purdue. You get fired out of Purdue. Jeff Brohm is the absolute exception. Like, not a lot of guys go from being Purdue's coach to hired out.
Nick's already on the phone. Nick's already on the phone with Purdue's AD, telling him how great Bill O'Brien is. What about?
They'll try to place him there, I bet.
What about Dan Mullen?
That I could see.
Because, I mean, it is like Purdue traditionally, like from the Joe Tiller era, which was the best era that they'd really ever had in the modern, college football until Jeff Brohm. Like, this has always been kind of a spread you out, in conflict with what the rest of the Big Ten generally is. They are, quote unquote, the kind of renegade in that Ohio State runs it, but Ohio State's got so much more talent than you do. Purdue is the one team that's kind of been trying to run the spread in the Big Ten for 20 something years now.
I would love to saying Jason Candle. To me, that would be a horrendous fit because he does the least with the most in the MAC, and like there's no evidence he's a good coach with lesser players.
Dan Mullen does make some sense.
Yeah,
but he is so happy doing TV,
and he's so good. Let me just
very good at
it. Let's
happy
keep him there.
Well, I talked to him last week, and he was like, "I look at coaches, and I can't tell who won the game." And I think he's putting himself back in that spot. Like, where's the enjoyment? And he's still probably making a boatload, right, from Florida.
A guy I can see work there is Willie Fritz.
Oh man, don't make me have to root against Willie Fritz once a year.
Little bit of an oddball scheme. Has had to recruit at an academic school. Knows how to evaluate players.
What about? So the chat was asking about Dave Clawson. My Dave Clawson line, and I've not checked in on this recently, is that after only staying in one place for like 4 years no more than 4 years for almost his entire career. The fact that he has not only settled down at Wake Forest, but built consistency, established a good relationship with that booster base and that community, sure seems like he doesn't want to have to start over like he did at so many different places throughout his career. Not that he's specifically going to retire there, but that, it's going to take something that might be very convincing. Now, Purdue has a truck full of money that could be very convincing. He's had to identify a unique type of player to be able to deal with the academic restrictions at Wake Forest. Purdue would be nothing that would intimidate him on that front. Do you think that would be one that Purdue would Purdue have that high on the list, or is that on the list just based on some of his experience and success with the Demon Deacons?
I think he should be high on your list. Like, the guy's a great football coach.
Yeah, I think that that's somebody that you would definitely want to be, like if you're putting together a board, I think Dave Clawson should probably be on it. If you are any real Power 5 job right now, honestly, he's done a tremendous job there.
Any other names that you would pick up the phone and call, make them say no?
Urban Meyer,
Deion Sanders. Hey, Deion.
You did say
all the
Sean
same
Lewis,
color
like
scheme.
we have seen coaches spend 2 weeks on a staff and leave for a better job. So like
but you know what? This is a weird thing because like we haven't really seen, like it used to be, you wanted a Big Ten head coaching job one day, you just got a MAC job and you had a good couple seasons and then you would end up getting a Big Ten job. And that kind of is like dried out in recent years. And I think part of it is it's a side effect of the financial gap. Because if you look at what Sean Lewis was making at Kent State, I think it was about
400.
It was like, in like 500,000 area.
Yeah.
The average Big Ten coach right now is making what, 5-6 million?
Mm-hmm.
So like you're taking a coach and you're going to give him 10 times as much as he was making, or you're going to give him what would be a kind of, normal raise, but then now he's very much below paid compared to everybody else in the conference. And I think it just makes it a lot harder now for Big Ten teams. And I think SEC teams are going to do the same thing. It makes it a lot harder to hire head coaches from smaller schools where the salaries are so different. You kind of need to do like what we've seen, the Matt Rules, now Dan Mullen's name getting mentioned. You need to hire big name guys who've had jobs elsewhere. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's part of the reason Sean Lewis has taken the OC gig at Colorado. I think he views that as a much clearer path to a head coaching job at a Power 5 right now.
Do they
also his quarterback and his top 2 receivers hit the portal?
Yes.
Do they surprise a couple good names in the chat that, had been mentioned? Brian Hartline interviewed with Cincinnati, or Jim Leonard, who says he's not going to stay at Wisconsin. Are those names, like, do you think they would take a risk or they want to go?
I'll say based on timing, Jim Leonard just announced last night that he is not going to be staying with Wisconsin beyond 2022, as previously reported.
Ooh.
Did a little birdie get in his ear and tell him that Purdue might be opening up soon?
Did he? I was not clear on, did Leonard say he was going to stay on with Fickell or just through the bowl?
There was like a
reported.
Yeah.
He did not say, but it was reported that Leonard had committed to be Fickell's DC, and then he notes apped us. And,
then it's a little more interesting if he said it, if there were reports he was going to stay for the entire, for the Fickell era and he backed out, then it does seem a little bit like the timing is.
I can't rule it out because I thought Deion to Colorado was an incredibly strange fit and that ended up happening anyway. But Jim Leonard to Purdue to me just seems kind of completely different than what they typically look for in their head coach, like a defensive coordinator. I'm not saying he wouldn't do well there or that they shouldn't consider him. It would just surprise me if that's the direction Purdue went.
Deion to Colorado, had Colorado not like totally flipped its position on allowing transfers in academically, would have been a terrible fit. Like Deion would get run out of Colorado under the restrictions that Carl Durrell had to deal with academically in 2 to 3 years. Okay. Like, you're not going to beat out Georgia and a bunch of those guys for big-time transfers. You're going to be taking sort of some cast-offs from guys who couldn't start because they were blocked, some guys who got dismissed due to behavior or academics, and you can get them into Colorado. That's how you flip the Colorado roster. Like, I don't think you were wrong to think it was a strange fit based on what everybody knew about Colorado and the restrictions under which Carl Durrell and the past staffs had to work with as far as accepting transfers academically. Like, I think you were right about that. What changed was that Colorado said, hey, we're going to scrounge together a bunch of money and we're going to let you take whoever you want to take here academically.
And then with the Hartline suggestion, I don't know. I mean, Hartline, maybe he's the OC at Ohio State next, or maybe.
And I wanted to get to it. We'll probably save transfer portal rankings for Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, just because, this is huge breaking news. And we do have some other coaching carousel pieces to this, including Kevin Wilson being the new head coach at Tulsa. I would imagine that Hartline is in line. Hartline is in line for a promotion.
He's on a hotline.
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees. Is he okay? Is he all right?
We're going to use
the points bet lightning parlay, same game parlay presented by Coach Brees.
Points bet NIL. Will that work? Can we do that? Or
it is in Indy. We do have legal sports gambling in Indiana.
Yeah, so I'm saying,
right?
Yeah, it's one of the legal states.
That would be that's the Jeff Saturday hire, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the four. Wasn't that one of the four things they said could not be an NIL, but like they can't really enforce it?
Gambling.
Yeah. I think that was like they're not allowed, they're not supposed to, but like what are somebody's gonna say, dare, like go ahead, try me.
I think they can enforce that.
They could.
Well, here's the thing though, like you can beat the rat, but you can't beat the ride. Well, as you're suing the NCAA to be able to take the money, you're probably still having to sit out. And these players all have just 4 years of college eligibility. That's why a lot of them won't challenge the claret rule, because yeah, you might win legally, but you're not going to get those eligibility years back, and that's your career you're playing around with.
Yeah, that's true. So other coaching carousel moves, we mentioned Sean Lewis, the sitting head coach at Kent State, leaves that job to go become the offensive coordinator at Deion Sanders, a pay raise likely associated with that. UNLV,
well, hold on. You just said he went to be the offensive coordinator at Deion Sanders. Which shows that Deion's plan is already working. It's no longer the University of Colorado. It is Deion Sanders.
DSU in Boulder, Colorado. The Deion Sanderses. Here comes Deion riding Ralphie. So Deion hires Sean Lewis. UNLV, after the local paper puts out a, it's, do you want Coach O? Who was the second option that they threw on there? They put out a poll.
Oh, there's Coach O, there's Gary Patterson. I don't know who was on the poll, but these are the names that were getting flown out that I'd heard in recent,
And then sure enough, it's Arkansas defensive coordinator Barry Odom, former Missouri head coach, which, I would like to hear the take on that. And then, of course, Kevin Wilson to Tulsa. Those were the big head coaching moves that had all happened as of last night prior to today's breaking news of Jeff Brohm to Louisville. So what about Barry Odom going to UNLV? I kind of feel like it's good for Barry Odom. Not sure about UNLV and how I'm adjusting expectations based on the arrival of Barry Odom.
I thought Arroyo was doing a good job. I thought that they were improving. They were trending in the right direction. So when they made that move, and this is nothing against Barry Odom, but I thought there was a bigger name in mind than Barry Odom. You know what I mean? I thought they had something that they were planning to do.
Oh, Chris Peterson. That was it. They put out a poll. The Review Journal put out a poll that was do you want Ed Orgeron or Chris Peterson? UNLV fans, vote away. And after introducing Chris Peterson, who was one of the winningest coaches,
who the hell ever thought Chris Peterson would take the UNLV job?
Or Ed Orgeron, who won a national championship, they were and you know who it is? It's Barry Odom. Let me tell you about the values of Drop 8 in the Mountain West and how it's going to work.
I mean, look, he did a fine job at Missouri. I guess they never really got the offense right enough. Do you remember how we talked about what eventually the conversation was going to be like with Brohm and the boosters, and how they didn't recognize the quality of job being done there after a while, after giving you credit for it at first? Eventually, they're going to want to see more. I think Arkansas will get to that spot with Sam Pittman. Right?
Ooh.
I mean, eventually, to me, in the SEC, Arkansas making bowl games, 7-5, 8-4 are excellent years for Arkansas. Personally, I'm not a person who thinks Arkansas should win 9-10 games. They don't recruit at that level to justify that expectation, and other teams that they have to face on an annual basis do. So if you're Barry Odom, you've been getting a lot of credit for how well Arkansas has played defense for 2 of the last 3 years. This year was a challenge. You want to get back into head coaching? Did a reasonable job at Missouri. I understand it. I think they fired Arroyo because their really big booster there didn't like the hire in the first place, because the AD that the big booster supported was not the guy who hired Arroyo, right? She's gone. She's actually now the AD at, where did UNLV's AD go? Missouri, I think. So the person who hired Arroyo is now elsewhere. And the AD that hired Arroyo was not the one that was backed by the big booster, from how it was expressed to me. So Arroyo was not looked at as the guy that was supported by the big money booster there. If you got a lot of money at these G5 programs, you are essentially the NFL owner. You call the shots. The AD has a title, but they don't really get to make the decisions.
But Barry Odom's the guy the big money booster wanted?
I don't know on that.
That's what I'm saying. It's you got polls with Chris Peterson Ed Orgeron, the Gary Patterson's name. I had heard Brian Harson's name floated. It's like I thought they wanted somebody who was like a proven kind of head coach with Mountain West experience, blah, blah, blah. And again, Barry Odom might work out great for UNLV. They might win a whole bunch of games. It was just I was very surprised that that's where they ended.
It's a tough job, though. Like from the outside, when we go to Vegas, right, we don't drive past UNLV unless we stop in and see that. Like I stopped in and saw them over the summer. If you're taking recruits to UNLV from the airport, you're taking like the 30-minute drive around, so you don't have to go through the really rough part of town that the straight shot from the airport is to get to UNLV, right? It's also a really expensive city to have fun in if you are an 18 to 21-year-old kid, right? Like, so it's harder to recruit to UNLV than you think it would be just based on like Vegas, right?
I always thought that was the NIL opened up the opportunity for Las Vegas to be able to rally around UNLV in a way where it only takes a few people trying to hide money to be able to like very quickly set up an operation that can put money in the pockets of transfers and improve your football team.
Can you get sponsored by the Spearmint Rhino?
Yeah, we've got a lot of cash that needs to be cleaned up.
There's a lot of cash flowing through that place.
It'll be interesting to see how Barry Odom builds out that staff and how the Rebels look on the field.
What about one of the Monken brothers for Purdue?
Jeff
or Todd?
I think Todd would probably be more where they're going, but I can't rule Jeff out. I do think that wherever they go, it's going to be an offensive guy because that's just what they've always been.
We'll keep
Sorry
an eye
for on UNLV. I just thought about that.
I thought about Dino Babers too, but Dino Babers is 61 years old. You might be able to sell that, but we'll see.
He did beat you this year.
He did beat you, yeah.
I need to rewatch that game. That was an incredible experience.
It was one of those just college football games that kind of happens and you throw it into the ether afterwards.
I held on to it close to my heart. It was so dumb.
Yeah, it was very dumb.
It was so dumb. Okay, so Kevin Wilson to Tulsa, any other sort of standouts from the recent moves on the coaching carousel? Anything you're keeping your eyes on? Obviously, Purdue and what a Big Ten job is open at a program that has been making bowl games recently. The floor, it seems to have been raised. The expectations certainly have been raised. We'll be keeping our eyes to see who ends up going to fill that job. For Louisville, good gravy. I'm sure you are thrilled right now. This is an early Christmas for Cards fans. Your basketball team stinks, and your football team at least now finally has its hero. He's coming home, baby.
Tulsa feels like an uninspiring hire. I'm not saying Kevin Wilson can't work there. And I think the whole, like, eventually the boosters want to believe in something and you have to give them something new to keep them donating thing applies for the firing of Phil Montgomery. Like, Tulsa's an extremely hard job. Montgomery did a fine job there, I think. And results-wise, I don't think he necessarily had to be fired. Certainly there's nothing Kevin Wilson has done as a head coach that suggests that he's a better head coach than Phil Montgomery, but it gives you, like, how do you keep people donating? That's the key to a lot of these hires. It's, hey, Power 5 experience at Ohio State, high-flying offense. Let's ignore when he was the head coach because that was a disaster. That kind of stuff. That's how you sell it to your boosters. I think G.J. Kinney staying at Texas State and not taking the Tulsa job is interesting.
Weird. Yeah.
North Texas is going to be a job all these coaches want. Like, North Texas will, if they do the search right, will get somebody better than you think they can get.
As they are on their way to the American Athletic Conference to be a conference foe of
and
Kevin
location.
Wilson and Tulsa.
Like, that's a better job than Tulsa.
This is going to be hard. Not hard. It's our job. We love doing this, but we're going to have to reset a lot of these programs as these shifts happen this offseason and then next offseason. The landscape is changing, and it's very, very fun to keep track of all of it.
North Texas is recruiting Odell Beckham. So
Odell Beckham as head coach. What could go wrong? Said the NCAA violation report.
That's why he was really
in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, we will be back 11 a.m. Eastern time with our Army Navy locks. You can guess where we're going to be at with that one. So
Did you know?
We will preview America's game. What?
Did you know the under for the Music City Bowl, the total for Iowa, Kentucky is lower than the Army Navy total right now?
Yeah, I actually mentioned that on CBS Sports HQ last night. I had to give out one of my favorite bowl picks, and it was from the Music City Bowl. And I said a game with a lower total than Army Navy.
That's
magical stuff. And you know who the host was? Paul Burmeister, the former Iowa quarterback. And so when I got out there and I said Kentucky and lay the points, let me tell you, Hayden Fry's former quarterback was not too happy to be staring at my Muppet-looking face coming back at him saying that I didn't know how many points the Hawkeyes were going to score.
No Petrus, no Padilla. They might need Paul to play. I mean,
that's what I should have said immediately after I got off. That's what I was thinking right there. Anyway, we will be back 11 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday. We will preview Army Navy. We will rank our top available players in the transfer portal and much, much more from the coaching carousel. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.